Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm just going to show you guys some pretty awesome crystals. Now, if you want to learn a lot more about the details of crystal formation, what defines a crystal, how crystals form, then check out the video on crystals. I've done a couple of talks about them here at Let's Go Geo, but for today, let's just take a look at some of these cool crystals. So, everybody loves crystals, and the challenge is that what we think of as crystals is usually tied to the idea of shiny, sparkly stuff, gemstone-related material, which the gemstones are cut, actually. They don't all exist in nature like that. The rough forms don't exactly look like the jeweled forms. But because of that notion, I think people assume that a crystal is simply something that would be sparkly like this piece I have here. But not all what we would call crystals are actually going to have this sparkly look per se. A crystal, minerals can take a lot of different crystal forms. So this is one that we might call druzy. Quartz and calcite do this quite often. There's a couple of other minerals that will encrust on the surface or fill voids. Zeolites, things like that fill voids also. We can get this nice sparkly look. And these crystals have space to form, so sometimes they can grow large in a larger void. In vugs, we find some interesting crystals, like those that we saw with the Herkimer diamonds that we talked about here. Other large cavities, like those gigantic gypsum crystals, they had a lot of room to grow. And another thing this might contribute to is the clarity. That's why these crystals will be so pretty like this. But crystals can take a lot of forms, like I mentioned. You might be familiar with garnets. Here we have a nice garnet. The garnets have a couple of different forms, and there's a couple of different types of garnets. But these are some pretty cool shapes, and they actually do come like this. So this doesn't have to be cut. This is a raw garnet that you can find the garnets in this shape. So that's what makes garnets kind of special. So we'll talk again about the different types of garnets. I'll do a whole series on garnets so you can learn the different types and their shapes and colors and all the varieties of garnets. So check that out if you're interested. I have a couple of different garnets in my collection, and I often visit garnet-containing localities. So there will be lots of that here. Another form is such as this rutile crystal. I did do a whole video on rutile. Let me see if I can get it here. There we go. So rutile is really shiny, kind of submetallic, very vitreous, really shiny crystal. Again, coming into line with that more authentic idea of crystal, right? When it's shiny, when there's faces to hit off the sun there. So we think of crystal. So it has a really nice crystal form and that submetallic shine to it, that gleam. So again, this is rutile. Cassiterite also has a similar look. These are tin oxide minerals. Again, I did a whole thing on this mineral, so check the minerals playlist if you want to learn more about that mineral. Azurite, I did do azurite as well, so I talked about the details of that, but look at that glistening. Azurite is super cool. It can be in this, what we see as sparkly crystalline form here in those voids, but it has a couple of other different crystal shapes as well. See how I'm using crystal shapes there to imply that they're not all just the sparkly one that you see here. But yeah, this is azurite. This is a copper-related mineral often found with our next guy, and that is malachite. Here's malachite. And actually, while I'm showing malachite, I want to show this other mineral here. Let's take a look at that. See that radiating form? It's like I said, they're not always those gemstone crystal looks. Some of them, actually, their crystal form is radiating like this, or even fibrous. This is sort of fibrous and radiating looking here. So they form these, some of them form splays. There's some that form kind of a wheat pattern to them. But this one has the radiating look as well as that malachite I showed you. Again, another copper-related mineral. But these are smaller little radiating patterns there. But they are doing the same thing as those other minerals I just showed you. So check that out if you can see the radiating look of crystals. So fibrous and radiating is another crystal form we can find. Let's take a look now at this. This is a crystal, very shiny form. This one is actually hematite. It's an iron related minute. It's heavy iron content. Hematite, magnetite. I did talk about hematite here as well, but look how crystalline that is. But hematite can take some other crystal forms as well, and one of those is botryoidal. I have another botryoidal forming crystal here. Look at that bubbly look. I just talked about bubbly minerals. That's actually a crystal form, so that goes with what I was talking about these different shapes of crystals, and what we think of what is a crystal can really be different. So check out crystal forms. Like I've mentioned, to get some sort of guidebook or field guide to minerals if you really want to get into mineral collecting. I'll just stick a link below to one that I really like. And yeah, you really would do well to get a guidebook if you're going to be in the field looking for minerals, because these crystal shapes actually can help us decide what mineral we have. And one caution is never to go by color. Crystal shape will be a lot more reliable. Now, some minerals can actually share crystal shapes. There are repeated crystal shapes. Like I said, this one is botryoidal, and this one actually can have that same botryoidal crystal shape. So one mineral can have multiple crystal shapes, and two minerals can share a crystal shape. But it's still a really restricting property to know, and it will help you define what mineral you have. I have another one here I can show you. It's super cool. Check this one out. This is always one of my favorites. I don't know if it comes up as favorites for others per se, but this is actually lead. This is the mineral galena, and this is actually a really shiny mineral. People might not be aware of that, but really pretty. Has a cool crystal shape that is somewhat similar to the rhombs of calcite. So calcite has these rhombohedral looks to it. That's one way you could distinguish this, say, from hematite, because lead and hematite can look somewhat similar. I also talk about that in the hematite video, about like testing the streak and all these different mineral tests you can do. Check that out. Again, yeah, if you're wanting to identify minerals, check out my video on the tools you need and how to identify minerals and how to use the most hardness. All that will come in really handy, but definitely along with some sort of guidebook. When I talked about those rhombohedrals, the rhombohedrons of calcite, here you go. You can really see it there. Look at those rhombs. Clear, beautiful rhombs. Perfect sign of calcite. Can't go by color on minerals like this, because boy, calcite comes in a lot of different colors, and it would possibly look like a different mineral. Calcite also comes in different crystal shapes as well. This is one. Here, I have a loose one here I can show you. Check that out. Isn't that cool? Beautiful when it's crystal clear like this. It just looks like almost like a piece of ice, but again, that's not a cube. See, that's like a slanted, what we call a rhombohedron. So you can see it's just kind of slanted a little bit. But it can also come in other patterns. We have dogtooth spar, we call calcite, that has a totally different crystal shape that's more pointed looking, kind of like these fat pointed looking crystals. Really beautiful crystals there. And so then let's look at a different crystal now. How about this one? Do you know what this one is? This is quartz. Pretty classic quartz crystal shape there. See, now that's getting again into what you'd think of as a crystal, because that is a very common shape with quartz. But again, I showed you quartz can have other forms, like the little druzy linings, and you can get massive quartz where it doesn't actually form the crystal faces. So that's the distinction here. Different crystal forms, but whether or not they have faces that flash the sun at us. Here's some more quartz just for fun. This quartz is just a little tinged, but nice crystal formations there, and that typical quartz points there. Even sulfur can form crystals. You'll see here that every mineral has a crystal form. I think I've made that pretty clear now. Every mineral has its own crystal form, and it can have multiple crystal forms. But you don't think of some of these minerals as crystals, but they are, because they have their own distinguishing crystal form. But even sulfur can have the nice shiny crystals. It has a couple different crystal forms, and in this case you can see it has some pretty beautiful crystalline patterns. This material is, so we have a lot of different things going on here, actually. We have feldspar in the background. There might be some mica in there. Mica forms sheets. Its crystals are sheets. And then we can get pyroxenes and amphiboles and different things like this is from a pegmatite, a granite pegmatite. But those all have a lot of these elongated, like the black mineral here, these elongated cylindrical, as well as more of this. This one's not as elongated as this. So they have a couple different crystal forms, and you'll identify them by those shapes. And yeah, tourmaline also has a look like that. But again, some of them splay out, like kyanite does a splay pattern. But there you go. There's just a couple of different crystals. How about this last one? This is kind of a pyramidal shape that you can see there. And that's fluorite, very distinctive of fluorite. So super cool. Looks really cool against that white background. So that's just one more crystal shape that you can find out there. There are a ton of others. There's even patterns like this that are dendritic, that look like plant forms. Some more garnets there. And some chromite-related minerals here. So lots of cool crystals. I'll talk about all of these here at Let's Go Geo. If you want to learn about minerals and geology, then just join me on the next adventure. Check out the minerals playlist for any of these minerals. I'll see you guys on the next adventure.